Hey, man. Well, you'll be back in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for.
So they can hear us.
What? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Are we unmuted? Are we live?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Emergency Services Council meeting. And first, let's give it up for our director for giving us this outstanding dinner with cookies and most excellent coffee. Thank you, Sheree. Just as a reminder, these, they're called this, I guess it's owl, these two owls are very sensitive and you don't want to be caught on mic like, never mind. So just be careful about side conversations. They're very sensitive, okay? And with that, we'll start with the instructions to the public for public participation.
Emergency services council member matters that may not be in the agenda. If you would like to make a comment for items on the regular agenda, please wait until that item called for discussion.
And I understand we have one member of the council that's joining us by Zoom. Is she on?
Through the chair, yes, she is.
Thank you. All right, so let's do roll call then if everybody's here.
Here.
Belmont, Brisbane, Burlingame, Colma,
Here.
Dade City,
Glenn Sylvester, present.
East Palo Alto, Foster City,
Present.
Half Moon Bay, Hillsborough, Lily Drum, present. Menlo Park, Betsy Nash, present. Millbrae.
I know, our, on Zoom, Ann Schneider, who's from Millbrae. But she,
Sorry, Ann Schneider from Millbrae, asking for Just Cause to come in remotely while recovering from COVID. I fell down the stairs and badly sprained my ankle, so it's in a brace, and driving is not high on my list right now. Did not feel safe driving all the way to Redwood City.
Thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Pacifica,
Sue Butterloss here.
Portola Valley,
Craig Taylor, present.
Redwood City, Kaya Aiken, present. San Bruno,
Rico Medina present.
San Carlos,
John Dugan here.
San Mateo, South San Francisco.
Sharon Reynolds, standing in for Eddie Flores.
Woodside,
Paul
County of San Mateo.
Here. Thank you for doing that. Whoops. Now we'll move to item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Anybody want? Thank you,
Second.
Marie. Moved and seconded. Can we just do all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item 3, approval of the minutes for the June meeting.
Move to approve minutes. Glenn Sylvester, second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is our public comments, correspondence, and announcements. Clerk.
I'm receiving no correspondence in regards to this meeting or agenda items. Are there any other comments? Any other thing?
Any on Zoom? No? Okay. So be it, we'll move to item. We're going through this awfully quickly. Folks. Okay. Item number 5 is the director's vision and director's report. And so we'll turn it over to Dr. Cerruti.
Do I have to stand here?
You can stand anywhere you want. You're the boss.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome members of public. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. A little bit about me. I'm not taking the state route here. There used to be a position. And the emergency management for health. Now I'm here. And so as I was thinking about this meeting, I was thinking about my journey and what matters to me. And what matters to me is life safety. Whether it's a physician or here as the director of DM. And this is something that I think all of you have in common. I'm also a resident of San Mateo County and I want to serve this community. And I think that's another thing. And so I'm here and I'm really grateful that we can create a vision together. City, special district, town, law, fire, emergency management. Needs to be taken. And so this is month 3.5 for me. And we are looking at aligning ourselves with national preparedness goals. Next slide. So we are committed to making our community safety and resiliency before, during, and after disasters. That's what matters to me, and I think that's what matters to you as well. Next slide. A little bit about us. We have a growing team right now. You can see in the picture. Can DM team members please stand up? This is the team right now. I'm only the pretty face. They're the ones that are doing the hard work and making sure that we are prepared. Our mission has changed in the last 3 months. Our mission now is to advance community resilience through proactive and comprehensive approach to emergency management that includes the whole community. Disaster preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Next slide. National preparedness goal and framework. Prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. And these are the things that we're going to try to achieve here. Next slide. Prevention is basically avoiding or preventing, stopping. Protection is making sure that we protect both human life and environment. Mitigation is to reduce losses. Response, when there's a disaster, do something immediately, rapidly. And recovery is how do we get people to heal quick. Why does this matter? Next slide. we want to be, we're, here want to be data driven. So when we looked at the national framework, we thought about how does this make sense to us and why does it happen? So if we just look at one scenario, let's say wild preparedness, such as assessing the harvest, mitigation, fuel reduction, community outreach, these all lead to lowering wildfire risk, which basically means less resources needed for recovery, quicker recovery, decreased damage costs, less time for community to heal, fewer psychological impacts, reduced health impacts, whether they're short-term or permanent, and improved air quality. It doesn't matter if you're reading Morgan, or Rand Corporation, they all have some information, some communication on these topics. With these short-term things that we are thinking of, let's look at the long-term things. So decades of mitigation and preparedness efforts actually help prevent wildfires over a period of time. They decrease insurance costs. It's really expensive to live in this country. And you think about all the insurance costs going up, whether it's floods or flood risk or wildfires. How do we get people to live in this country? Long term, we're thinking long term. Increasing housing affordability. It doesn't matter which city you're in, we have unhoused folks. And we have the traditional unhoused folks, and then we have folks that are living out of their cars working 3, 4, 5 jobs, right? So mitigation actually over a period of time, you know, increases our ability to have affordable housing. Stronger sense of safety, security, and community. This is something we're striving for in our daily lives, in the area where everyone tries to connect on social media. Social media is so great, but how can we create that sense of community? Because that's one of the big things of recovery. When you have good communities, the recovery is also faster. Higher quality of life and decreased overall stress and anxiety. Again, American Lung Foundation, National Libraries of Medicine. I can give you a list of many places that advocate for these. And this is what our new vision. This is where we're going. Or we're thinking long term. We're definitely thinking short term because response is always in the forefront, but we're thinking about long term and how we make the county of San Mateo, whether it's a town, a city, or special district, more livable, more accessible. And that's where we're going with emergency management. Next slide. How are we going to get there? It's a big challenge. So we are now in the stage of basically creating the foundation. You know, we're looking at making a skyscraper, and the foundation is the key. It may not be the most appealing part of it, but it's the most important part of it. Although there may be some that may say the glass windows and the timber ceilings are important, but the foundation. And here's the foundation. These are our goals. Community resiliency by fostering preparedness. Integrating emergency management by strengthening partnerships. That's you all. That's each one of you. Advancing technology integrations in emergency management. We want to be the future of emergency management. Rapid and effective response and recovery. There's a lot of funding in recovery that we don't really get right now because this is something that we need to do better. And promoting continuous improvement and innovation. This is the key. We need to continue growing. We should not have a plan that's sitting on the shelf. The plan should be iterative. It should make sense. It should be easy to use. And how do we do that? How do we innovate? You see the two owls here. This is part of innovation. The owls have been on the market for a very long time. This room doesn't have capacity. Someone suggested this on our team. I think it was Ryan. And here we are. We're continuing to improve little things. Next slide. For us, we have a lot of things on our plate. Public education. This looks like doing Stop the Bleed classes. We have a few classes offering. We have cert classes, annexes that are being given, and then public information is the second part of it. We have an updated website that can be translated in 50 different languages. It's a brand new website in the last 3 months, which thanks to Rick Reed, we were able to make it happen. And that's really critical. How are we providing our constituents with the information they need to do their own preparedness? Disaster Preparedness Day, this is a big one. We host this every year. This year is going to be our 20th year, so we're very excited about that. And this is where we engage our communities on a grassroots level. Some people can't come to this big event, so we have to take the events to them. A small community meetings, town halls, events with our partner CDOs. This is a big one, our all hazard evacuation plan. So we have taken out all hazard evacuation planning. This is very critical. We're doing a 4-pronged approach. One of them is a true risk assessment. Where is our risk lie and how do we mitigate that risk? The second one is community engagement. We want to go out there and talk to the communities, understand what they think their risk is, where their issues are. And then the third one is integration of technologies. We want to use AI. Later today, you'll see a demonstration of the product that we literally just signed a contract. It's been in making for 3 months now, but we just signed a contract for it. They use AI to do evacuation simulation modeling. How do we eventually get this into people's hands so they can practice, they can understand? It's a pilot right now, and we're hoping that we are able to integrate that. And the last one, and the most important one of these prompts, is stakeholder involvement and feedback. It's really important that we hear from all of you, our law and fire partners, to make our evacuation plan as robust as it can be, because that's the most important thing. And then how do we continue to keep this socialized? Alert and warning. You'll hear a little bit about alert and warning in a later presentation we have. Next slide. Optimizing emergency management. Emergency management is all about relationships. If you have relationships ahead of time, that is 50% of the job. We want to build relationships with each of you, all of the cities, towns, special districts, fire, law. So we will be coming out and doing a sit down with each of the individual cities, learning what your needs are and building that in our strategic plan, which we will be doing. A lot of equity work. We are missing out on the access and functional needs. So all of our plans need to be updated with access and functional needs, with what the risk to the population is. How do we reach those folks that we have been able to reach during COVID and continue to have those relationships and keep them prepared for other disasters? Grants. there's a lot of recovery and mitigation grants. How do we get this money, whether that is a special district, whether it's a city? How do we work together to make sure that we're getting this funding and actually using it to mitigate risk and also recover it? DEM brand promise. We want to be able to have a brand recognition and have a brand promise. This is a trusted source. This is where you go to find that information. So you all can point and amplify a message, and we can amplify your message. Next, please. Technology. We live in Silicon Valley, so we're going to use technology. We're not going to forget the analog, get in a EOC, do the things that we need to do here in the EOC, but we need to remember technology. Yeah, and so we're going to pilot them, and you'll get them shortly. VOG, this is a virtual EOC platform. So we had about one city built out. We had our staff working double time, triple time to build out all the cities. We're getting all the cities trained up, and we'll have some exercise as well. But how do we make sure we integrate? We have situational awareness. We have virtual emergency operations center. GIS dashboards. This is where we take all the information and we're able to have real-time situational awareness of what's going on, whether that's, wildfire cameras or other cameras, whether it's, NOAA's live weather stream. So figuring out what those APIs are and creating those dashboards that we need to do, we need to have for emergency management. Real-time situational awareness. There's a lot to be done there. Can we have gauges in our creeks? Can we have cameras where flooding happens? Can we have areas where we need to put sensors for air quality? How do we get that real-time situational awareness? Next slide. Rapid and effective response and recovery. This is the basis of emergency managers. This is one of the foundational things. It's plans, trainings, and exercises. And coordination is the last piece. We're going to update our emergency plans, make sure folks are trained. And once they're trained, we continue to exercise so we can keep those skills sharp and we can continue to be competent. We're going to be bringing in trainings for the cities and the special districts and the towns. But we're also bringing in training for our own staff, disaster service worker training. So creating a training plan. Exercises, multiple exercises that are coming up. Golden Guardian is an exercise that's coming up that we're doing with San Francisco. It's a supply chain exercise. And as we know, during COVID, supply chain was something that had significant issues. And this is something that we think is really important. The supply chain is something that we're going to focus on. We're also going to be working with a couple of other agencies for an exercise called BAYX. So there's a couple of exercises up front, but really focusing the next couple of years on plans and training. That is really important. And coordination during an emergency. What does that look like? What do informal lines of communication looks like? How can we put that into processes that help us be more systematic? How can we make sure that every city, every town, every special district, every CBO has the information they need to serve their community? This is important to us. Next slide. The last one, strategic planning. So we are going to embark on, we're going to put an RFP out soon for strategic planning. We want all of you to be involved. I really hope at least a few of you are involved, but this is not a DEM strategic plan. This is a San Mateo County up area strategic plan. So what are we going to achieve together? EOC operations, how do we as the EOC here make sure we update the things that we have in the Emergency Operations Center? They're almost 5 years out. How do we harden that infrastructure? How do we make sure people that have left that had the EOC knowledge during COVID that don't have that knowledge? How do we fill that gap? That's disaster service worker training. So really focusing on that internally for us. And we have so many improvement plans. It's very traditional in emergency management to create after action report and improvement plans, and then people forget about it. So let's look at our improvement plan. Let's see what has been done, what needs to be done. Maybe some things don't need to be done, but let's at least look at it. Next slide. We are committed to making sure we enhance the safety and resiliency of our community. This is what we want to do, and I want to open it up because I really want to hear from all of you. This is not my vision. This is our vision, and you can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll open it up for questions. We'll start over here and kind of work our way around, if that's all right. Question?
I have several, but I'll just ask a few. So defining, so would, we're learning that hacking, people infiltrating our computers and, trying to have, money, kind of check. Is that defined as an emergency? It's an emerging threat?
Absolutely. So it's one of the top three that's been established by the intelligence communities, cybersecurity. We are actually bringing in training for cybersecurity, which all of your cities will have access to. And that will be brought in this year. Cybersecurity top on our list.
Okay, so this committee works on that.
Yes.
One of my big questions, and I'll stop, but is the integration. So, each of our cities, we all have really great staff, and we're always asked to vote to approve new radios, new, new things to make us safer, new equipment. And are we coordinating? Is there any integration with that? If our folks have the equipment, I know we borrow some stuff from the county, I know. And some of the equipment is located in the county, and I know we play well, but it seems to me there's more we could do. If you could talk about that a little.
Yeah, so I actually do not know the capabilities, and I'm wanting to learn more, but we are the up area. So basically, all emergencies are local. So the cities, the towns, take care of those emergencies first, and then we were we can't help them, we go to the state. But we are your off area, and so it is, we should coordinate better. And that is one of the things that I have to achieve.
Well, I know in particular for my city, we're looking at some deficits, and I'm guessing that some of the other cities are too. So it just, a bigger bang for the buck.
Yeah.
If there's can be some shared
Process and shared cost, absolutely.
I have more questions, but I'll stop.
Thank you. We'll move. Yes.
So I think what we hear from members of the public tends to be very sort of immediate short term. A while ago, it was wildfires. Everything was wildfires. Well, we had a lot of rain, so we don't hear much about wildfires from the public. We haven't had an earthquake in quite a while, so I don't get any email from the public, drought. So anyway, the public's concern are very immediate right now, the emergency of the day. But we have to balance all of these things in the long term. Just anything you have in terms of thinking about balancing those and providing for the emergencies that we haven't had in a while and they're not front of mind. But we still have to be prepared.
So I think that's a great point. Emergencies, I think, are like fashion. My dad's a fashion designer. So, you know, you have phases, and funding follows those trends at the national level. So sometimes you get funding to do cybersecurity, for example. That means they're funding to cybersecurity, which is why we're bringing in training. And it's good to be able to partake in the funding, but my hope here is that we are prepared for all hazards. Because something like earthquake, if you're prepared for an earthquake, you're most likely prepared for almost everything, maybe not a zombie apocalypse. So that is what we are focused on. And I think you're absolutely right. It's right now everyone's focused on the storm, you know. The summer will come, everyone will be focused on air quality and heat. Then, you know, maybe there will be a new virus and people will be concerned about that because the COVID has left an impact on our hearts, I think. So these are things that continue to happen. We're going to be proactive in putting out information and not reactive. But also we're going to create that infrastructure where we are more oriented towards preparedness, mitigation, and recovery, because we know we went through COVID together, right? We know we can do that, right? And so we do well in responses. So we're not going to be as focused there. It's going to be obviously a priority because things.
Well, thank you. Welcome. Truly appreciate your presentation. It's really helpful to hear that there is vision there, and then it does take time to put it together. There are a couple of things that I would love for you to elaborate a little bit. One is that I know that in San Mateo County, among the cities, the fire and the police, they have a lot of mutual aids. They're actually very strong in terms of training, in terms of collaborating. So where does DEF comes in, and how do you see that play out in terms of facilitating, collaborating, or leading? You know, so I would like some clarification. And then the other part about the flooding. I sit on one shoreline, so I'm the border, and one of the program that we're implementing is the early flooding warning system. And it's been well received by the cities, and it's been well established, and their interest to establish more the creek and the bayside to see that there's early warning system, you know, taking place. To that, one shoreline number that we to try to insert ourselves to the significance, and then introduce ourselves to the public to let them know why it is important to collaborate. Takes time, and then not to step on people's toes, but to show that they're advantaged to do that. So just on those two fronts, want to get your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. So fire alarm, very, very important. The third one is the three things when we think of life safety. And then you go a little bit further, hospitals are going to be your top things to think about. We are actually very lucky that we have a fire liaison that sits in our office. This Emergency Services Council actually pays for those services. Tony has been fantastic. He will be supporting us on the all hazard evacuation planning. There is a radio infrastructure project that we collectively will be working with the fire chiefs on. In terms of the law, we've already had a great exercise with them. It was called the Asia Pacific Economic Summit. So we activated the EOC, and if you look at one of your attachments, we basically had every police department that we partnered with. So we want to strengthen those relationships. And EMS, you have all heard of the Medical Health Operational Area Coordinator, or the MOHAC, not a haircut. A person, a program that is supportive of the medical health piece of it. So EMS and the hospital, so there is a healthcare coalition, and we're making sure that we strengthen every single one of those pieces, because all of those will be sitting in our emergency operations center during a disaster, under operations. The other thing that we're doing this year is an active shooter exercise as well. So hopefully that answers your first question. The second question with One Shoreline, the flooding, collaborations are key. And I know they're building GIS dashboards, so I'm really looking forward to actually integrating their GIS dashboard into one. Eventually, in the next 2 to 3 years, I hope that there is 2 dashboards. One is that something that we as emergency managers can use to make real-time decisions. And then one for the public, so they know, they have that situational awareness of what's going on. Is there a storm coming? So they don't have to look at 15 different websites. They have one website that they can go to get their information, and we can plug into each one of your websites. That is what I want our brand promise to be. I want to be reliable.
On Sunday, we had a drowning and 2 beach rescues and a dog. And we tried so hard to educate the public. When we had the king tides, the police blocked off all the streets, yet hundreds and hundreds of people went to the beach to see the king tides. People got hurt, people don't pay attention, and we try to tell people about the powers of the ocean, and I don't know how more to educate people. We have signs that say people have died here, and people still don't pay attention, and I don't know. I mean, it's really frustrating for us.
You're so spot on. It's, how can it not be frustrating? Right? You see someone die, and this hasn't happened just in Pacifica on the coast.
The whole.
There's been quite a few drownings in the last couple of months, and it's astounding to me. Especially when you all put signs up, Caltree, but we put it on Nextdoor and SMC alert.
We tell people there was a woman with a little child. She's 30 feet away on her phone, and people are going, "Stop, go get her."
Yeah.
And she just went, "Oh, no big deal."
Yeah.
And you try to help people, and it just it doesn't work.
So
Sorry, it's too close.
I think and I think we need to figure out the science of what is, what works and what doesn't work. How do we communicate? Because over communication leads to people not paying attention. Under communication also is people not paying attention. And especially in the cases of drowning, it's usually not people that live on the coast. It's usually folks that don't live in that area, and the respect for nature is not there. Nature will come and take you away, and that's unfortunate. So I hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
I can chime in on that, just very briefly. With Supervisor Mueller and County Executive Calki, and fire partners, law partners, harbor master, we formed a little working group based on the recent drowning, see what we could do. And and some of those efforts were already put into place during some of the latest, high tides, including like electronic signage and such. Doesn't eliminate the issue, but it's something that's a priority at this point. To look and see if there's more we can do to, we'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, I don't have any questions, but would like to make a few comments, if I may. First of all, I'd like to welcome you in your new position into San Mateo County. And given your previous history of the medical field, everyone here has something to bring to the table in their different experiences. And I see you want to grab onto that, which I think is outstanding. That's what I got from your presentation. 3.5 months on the job, but yet the information you have presented, your goals and plans, and for years to come, definitely shows your willingness and your prowess to learn the other different aspects of not just the medical field to which you already have an expertise, but the emergency management. And I can definitely see that, and I'm very appreciative for that. 3.5 months, and within 3.5 minutes, you hit something that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm basically from the law enforcement field, retired, and that is getting the information out to the community. I went to a disaster preparedness day, and it is big, you're right. But to get it out to the community is even bigger, so that the community will understand suiting up into a hazmat suit. What's that all about? I did it, and it's not comfortable. But yeah, when they see these videos on TV, all those little people in those suits, you know how much that takes on the body, and you do. You mentioned a medical term, and you applied it to your presentation, and that was stop the bleed. I said, should talk about medical or emergency management, but yet you applied it so appropriately. So I wanted to compliment you on that. Everyone knows that AI is on the rise. I'm looking forward to the presentation later on. I'm glad you got the wherewithal, the forevision to think about using AI, because if we don't learn it, if we don't know it now, a confused mind will always say no. So thanks for that. And I got a couple more, but I'm gonna leave you with this. If you don't ask, you don't get. So there's certain things that you think is good for the community and this committee to learn about, ask for it. Don't be afraid, because this is a great committee, and we definitely support you. So don't be afraid to ask. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Rico?
Thank you, Chair. I'm gonna take a tee from Glenn and not have any questions, just for quickly. Is I think the Preparedness Day is a great example of how we can in our own communities go back and try to encourage. I've gone, I think we usually almost go to, Maria and I go to all of them, and it's just trying to get folks out there, because the resources and the information. And I think back to, and I've been maybe on the council a while, but you know, in 2010, when San Bernardino had the pipeline explosion, we had over 400 fire. We had over 200 police. We had mutual aid. We had county. We had state, et cetera. However, that was because it was one point, one facet. However, if we take that throughout the county of a major earthquake, are we prepared within our own municipalities to our own residents? Have they gained and understood that it's not going to be that? There will not be that opportunity. So how do we empower our local jurisdictions to empower our residents on the certain otherwise to step forward? I remember when it was under Sheriff's Department that there was a training exercise at Mills High School, and that was for active shooter. Now, nobody wants to talk about it. As an elected mayor, I say that's one thing that keeps me up at night, is I was so many months as the newly elected mayor, and we had YouTube. active shooter. But the schools are very vulnerable, and we all see those probably terrify us all. But are we having those resources available to our local agencies? Are we making sure fire and police are trained together cohesively? So when they have to go out and extract people out and be guarded while they're doing it. And I think those are the things that our communities expect us to somehow be prepared for, though we don't have all the answers. So I encourage us again at this level to say, maybe have it go down to all of our agencies and somehow get ourselves prepared, because I think the next time, i.e. earthquake, it will be a lot of us on our own, and it's just reality. And we have to really not be afraid to say it and prepare us for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. This is probably one of the most exciting committees I could be on. Obviously, I live in Foster City, and we have Third Avenue and East Hillsdale are the only two exits. I kind of want to go back to what you said about housing. If we look at our local law enforcement and fire department, with that advent, most of the people that live in the county, an offshoot of what happened because of 9/11 was called CERT. Most cities are doing it. Do we have, I had a series of questions, do we have coordination with CERT? And before I go into the coordination of CERT in our emergency services, do we have a county plan that actually knows the challenges that each individual city may have? Because if we need a task force, or we need a force to come out and help a surrounding city, we should be aware, like Foster City. I sat in on a lot of meetings in Foster City, and we basically felt that we were on our own. Okay, with the advent of CERT coming in, we felt more comfortable. With that said, I want to regress and ask a police and fire question. Is that one of the big things in the 9/11 report was the miscommunication between police and fire. We had I don't know how many people that died because of that. So do we have a universal center? We have consolidated fire, and that's wonderful. So I'm part of one of those. So that's a kind of a broader question. So maybe you can, you may not be able to address my questions, but I want to, we have a plan that we know what the surrounding cities really are challenges for us. Not that we have a challenge and then all of a sudden we've got to get together and help them if you can't reach them. And like I said, the big thing that you said, not just because I'm in real estate, is housing. If we can really afford housing, we'll figure a way to do that.
It's David to answer the question on CERT and
Sure, no, Foster City's always had a very active CERT program with Lee Block, and I've worked with her. I was a chief over in Coastside, Half Bay, running the Coastside CERT program, but every month we have a CERT coordinators meeting where all the different cities come and discuss the issues like you're talking about. The issues they're having, recruitment, challenges they're having. We publish a schedule and try to invite people, like if they had a member who couldn't complete a class and someone else has a class, like Mr. Anderson might have one up in South San Francisco and says, oh, I have an opening for that class, and we send people to them. So we do share between them. And
well, I'm a graduate of the CERT program. We just finished our levy. I brought up a suggestion and people kind of frowned on it, but you know what? The water may be in one exit for us depending on the catastrophe. So I'm more passionate on seeing something implemented, and we have cutouts at our levy, but even with CERT, as you know, we have the CERT program in Foster City. Right. We had it all stored up and we thought we'd gone, and then all of a sudden it went missing. All of our CERT equipment went missing. So I'm kind of looking at the checks and balances. Can we implement a program? We don't know what the catastrophe is. If I'm in Foster City and Third Avenue, Hillsdale go down and there's fires, maybe the only exit would be the bay. Now that may be true in a certain area in Redwood City too.
Yeah.
So internally, the cities will take care of the planning on that end of it, and each CERT program has its own identity and goals and has their own structure, but
But I want a master plan for the county because CERT is independent of the county. CERT is service of volunteers that are trying to help out because we don't have the police.
Yeah, so we just work in the coordination piece with the coordinators meetings.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing you say is that I'm trying to understand if there is a coordination or a plan among the CERTs. And if there is, what does that look like? Is that
Well, that's part of the question
Yeah.
too, but we realize we don't know when the catastrophe is gonna happen. We don't know whether it's 2 in the morning, 5:30 at night, commuter hour.
so how does communication work?
Correct.
Yeah, so that communication, let's say everything fails, right? You have your cell phone towers go down. You know, there are specific channels of, that are secondary, tertiary channels. Ham radio is one, so we have a pretty significant Scaries and Aries group, Scaries in South County, Aries in North County. Ham radio operators, that are volunteers that are preparing alongside search to help with that coordination. But it is something that we need to get better. So thank you for that comment, and we will definitely continue.
Betsy?
So I'm really excited to be, this is my first meeting, very excited to be on this board. And one of the areas that we hear a lot about in Menlo Park is we have a lot of active residents who are very interested in participating, preparing for disaster preparedness. Many of them are CERTs, but in a disaster, especially an earthquake, we will be relying on our neighbors.
Yep.
And just some sort of, how can we, whatever you can do to facilitate a plan for all of us to help us work. And best utilize these residents who are just really interested in getting involved as soon as possible.
So San Francisco County does have its own VOAD, it's called Thrive. And all of the VOAD stands for Volunteers Active in Disaster. So all of that communication kind of goes through Thrive, and Thrive would be here in our videos.
Okay, I get the first email, I have no idea.
Yeah, they give you many things, but they are. Thank you.
Nice presentation. In Woodside, we actually did have a huge disaster exactly a year ago, that happened, in my school. City, thanks for school house. Really had done what's just now. If you want to comment on the AI issue, I don't have any presentation. I don't know enough about it to really, people that I know trust say this is going to change everything. Well, and I'm also sure as interested in the effect on personnel, but it certainly has an effect on the speed of decision making, which in emergency services is everything. And so I'm hoping that at least now, especially in great application and evacuation planning and that sort of thing, are instant, we've seen examples of that all over the Bay Area where evacuation is real big. That would help. The last thing I wanted to mention was just, you mentioned the DEM brand protection and the trust that's there. I think today, fortunately, in the country, the trust in our institutions is, and I think DEM statewide especially, so no exception to that. It's not really problems, but having seen it here in medicine, NIH, CDC, and all the things involved in the FDA, we've all suffered with that. And I think the level of trust in our institutions is really at almost all the at least public, which is really bad. And so I'm happy to see this sort of plan, and I'm really happy to see your emphasis on that trust, how important that is. So I would only say that's something we really can't afford to screw up. And I think it's something where, you step in once and so I appreciate that you said that. So good luck.
Other questions?
Yeah, so I appreciate the goals and priorities. It's nice to sort of have a sort of a larger structure to look at. One thing I'm looking for is some sense for when are these things gonna happen? Kind of what are the dates? I mean, even if they're rough dates, quarters or whatever, so to sort of break it down so people can start to see what kind of deliverables are gonna happen when. So not that I expect you to answer that question tonight, but it would be nice to have some kind of roadmap on where these things are gonna happen, to sort of match up against these goals and priorities. And then in particular, when I look at this all hazards evacuation plan, do you have a sense for when that specific plan might be ready?
So the Board of Supervisors just signed the contract, and so we are going to have our first meeting soon. We're actually hoping that in the next year and a half we'll have it.
Because I think the real value that for the different communities is it's a template for them to understand what hazards they're preparing for. And you know, how it's gonna roll up, but what they're actually responsible for. So I think that would be really valuable. And then the last thing is I want to put a second in for, I think it'd be great if you collect the challenges that each city has. I think that will help you better understand the extent of your constituency.
Thank you for that feedback. We're definitely gonna meet with each of the cities and we'll get the challenges and what can we do to help, what can they do to help? And then, roadmap. Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
I think Ann Schneider has her hand up.
And then, prior to, Ann Schneider, commenting, we'd like to ask, one element of participation remote, which is there anybody over 18 in the room? And if so, what's the relationship? So just if she could clarify that before.
No, there is no one under 18 in the room. Okay. Really quick, Doctor, thank you so much. And again, I apologize. We tried to meet ahead of time. I love the presentation. I couldn't hear everything, but I do believe that I like your aspect about data. We should sit down and talk about data. For example, rainfall data comes from SFO, which is not a good measure for the water hitting the hillsides and flooding the lowlands of San Bruno or Millbrae. And that's a critical issue for us, having lost 2 people in the atmospheric river of 2021 on that. So there's a lot of data that we simply do not have. So I hope that you are open to working with us in identifying data needs. There's no air pollution data. There's only one monitor in San Mateo County. I believe Member Chung probably talked about the monitors that One Shoreline is putting in, but it's certainly not countywide. So I hope collectively we can work together on getting those monitors and get the hard data on that. And for my city right now, probably the most important thing, which might be more of a North County thing, is heat waves. We do not have air conditioning. We have always been reliant on fog, which we don't have anymore, and wind. But in heat waves, you have neither of those. And we have a population, we simply don't have air conditioning in most homes. And we can't get people to cooling centers. We've learned that through the last couple of heat waves. So I'm looking forward to this. I think other people said multiple forms of disaster. I agree with everybody. Thank you and welcome aboard. And again, I apologize. We'll get you up here for lunch. My treat.
Great, thank you so much, Anne, appreciate it.
Yeah. I wanted to do a time check. It's 6:30. And I know there are a couple of presentations. Should we just move to the presentations or can we have some more conversation? We move to the presentations?
Public comment is now open for item number 5. If your hand is raised in Zoom, you call for this item. If joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. No public comment.
Thanks. Okay, presentation number 1. Alert and warning presentation.
Thank you, Council, for having the opportunity to speak in front of you. My name is Ryan Reynolds. I'm Program Services Manager here with DEM. One of the programs I help to oversee is our Alert and Warning program. Next slide, please. So we wanted to take an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our Alert and Warning program and lay out the entirety of the Alert and Warning program. It's multifaceted. There's a lot of things that are involved in it. And then also have a quick discussion about understanding how and when we use these alert and warning tools. Next slide. There's two main components of our alert. Everything we run runs off Rave Mobile Safety. It is the platform that allows us to message to the public. The first, I think most of you are probably familiar with, is SMC Alert. This is used for urgent or critical situations. It allows us to send text, voice calls, email, and notify the public of situations that are going on. It's subscription-based. It requires people to sign up, and there can also be challenges getting people to sign up, not just here in San Mateo County, but across the state. But in addition to this, we have the ability to send out pause messages, which is the integrated public alert and warning system. This is an opt-out system. People have to actually go in and physically opt out of it. So we're going to take a bulk of the time today to discuss that, just to make sure that you guys have an understanding of what it is, its capabilities, and what we're going to use. It has three main components. The first is the emergency alert system. This is the traditional TV and radio broadcast when it interrupts and it notifies you that there's an emergency message, and then it reads it and provides a message on the screen. Another type is a non-weather emergency message. This is a message that we could send that would go to individual NOAA radios. The radio would come on, it would read whatever the message is, and it would inform the public of the emergency or whatever situation they needed. The third type that we'll spend the most of the time talking about is the wireless emergency alerts. And these are text style push notifications that can be sent to your phone. So next slide, please. Like I said, iPause is a system that's run by FEMA. It is done at the federal, state, and local level. It allows us to notify the public during critical and urgent situations. It's something that we would use in life-threatening situations. And it allows us to take authenticated messages and deliver them to the public very rapidly. Next slide. So it began in the 1950s. From the 1950s up until 2006, it primarily consisted of the radio and television broadcast system. One of the big major lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina in 2005 is that they didn't have an effective way to quickly notify people, particularly tourists that may be in the area. So that led to the development of the wireless emergency alerts and later for the non-weather emergency messages. And it just really does provide a great situation for us to allow us to message people quickly and hit a large audience. So next slide, please. As I mentioned, EAS is radio and broadcast, and NLM goes to the NOAA weather radio. So those are just sort of additional methods that we have. Next slide. Wireless emergency alerts. These are the really critical thing that we have. They look and feel like a text message, but they have their own unique vibration. They have their own unique sound. These are most commonly associated with Amber Alert, but they can be sent for any number of life safety issues that are going on. They're very, very quick. We send the message gets sent from FEMA, it dumps to the cell towers, it moves very rapidly, not caught up in congestion of phone lines. It allows us to send messages very quickly. We can send it to a geo-targeted area, and it will hit every cell phone that's in that area. This is really important for us. We have commuters coming into the community. We have tourists in the community. It allows us to hit more than just the people who subscribe. It has a backup redundant system in transmitting the messages. So we send the message, it gets transmitted to FEMA. They would send it then over the air to cell phone towers. But it also goes through the PBS broadcast system. So it beams up to their satellites, beams back down to the cell phone towers, and the secondary backup to sending signals. Just so I'm very clear, that's not sending it to the satellite and directly to your cell phone, but they are working on that, which we'll talk a little bit more in a little bit. There's no subscription to get it, and it requires people to actually go in and physically opt out of it on their phone. So it really does provide a nice backup for us to hit a lot of people. Some recent examples of when WEAs had been sent. In October 2021, there was an immediate evacuation need in Pescadero. Heavy rains, winds, real danger of flash flooding. So they sent to a localized area advising the residents that it was time to leave. And then anyone that was in that area would have gotten a cell phone message from that. In March 2002, there was a shelter in place in San Bruno that was related to a train fire. And then most recently in October of 2023, they did a nationwide test. FEMA did it. They sent an iPause alert to every single cell phone in the country. It was a good experience for them, and it was a method to get people more comfortable with the system. Next slide, please. They're working on constant changes to try and improve this system. The first is to try and improve language capabilities. Currently, WIA messages can only be sent in English and Spanish. The FCC, in combination with the actual phone manufacturers, want to be able to use the translation services within the phone to translate those WIA messages. So they will come in, whatever messaging or language you have detected there, it'll provide a translation and it will allow that information to come out. Probably the biggest thing that will have a major impact is that they are going to allow maps to be added to WIA. So there will be a small thumbnail you can click on there. It'll show you the location of the hazard and then provide your direction, which would make it much clearer to people on where to go. These things can often be very difficult. And then lastly, the iPhone specifically, anyone who has iOS 17, these messages can be very short, 90 to 360 characters, depending on the phone. They've added the ability for us to extend these messages. So you can click, you can add a lot more characters, try to provide additional information. You know, one of the challenges with WIA is that they're very short. So being able to have more information to be able to give the public more direction. Next slide, please. In addition to WIA, we have a few other methods that we use to notify the public that you may not be familiar with. The first is the coastal sirens. We have 8 sirens on the coast side. They're located in populated areas that are within the tsunami zone. We can trigger a warning that would sound the tsunami siren, notifying people that there's impending danger. The next one is the MyShake app, which is not a San Mateo product, but is done by Cal OES in conjunction with the USGS. And it will notify people potential earth shaking. It gives you a very short window and allows you to get under something. We've recently entered into agreement with 3 of the radio stations on the coast to allow us to call in, record a brief message, and it will play the top of every hour.
But that's under conversation.
Yeah. And then lastly, we use formerly Zonehaven, now Genesis Protect is an app that we use that they can use during evacuation to notify residents if there's a threat in their area. They have an app that's associated with that, that it will track the zone that you're in, and then you can also call in additional zones. Anytime there is a change in zone status, it can push a notification to you, notifying, hey, there's something in the area, you need to get more information. And that can also be used, you know, in times of evacuation or pushing that critical information.
So there's no more Zonehaven.
It just changed names, so it was lost by Genesis and they went through a rebranding.
Okay.
So nothing has changed, it just there is. And with that, questions?
Questions?
Sorry.
Craig Taylor for Tola Valley. Does the town have any control over the utilities, the cell phone providers, to actually get backup power on these cell towers? Because that's the thing we see is in Portola Valley, you know, we lose power for a couple of days, we lose our cell phones as well. So, and there's a state law that they're supposed to have backup on these things, but it's not clear when and how fast they're providing that backup power. So do you guys have any sense for whether they're doing it and then whether the towers in the county actually all have backup?
That is an excellent point. I do not have the answer for that.
Okay.
That's something we can look into.
Great, yeah, because I mean, if they use it,
Absolutely.
you know, Fryboss is, I'm
Yeah.
totally with you, it's a great system, provided you have it, so you know.
Over here, Betsy, or anybody over there?
Actually, I would be happy to wait to see if anyone else.
Okay, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and I've been active with the alerts. Question, what do we have in place? So obviously cell phones can be hacked, towers can be hacked. So what is in place? Number one. And number two, I found out something very informative by accident. I bumped into a Google expert that does AI, and he wanted to help me with my phone and put AI. And I thought it was very sweet of the guy to do that. But the next thing he did was he popped out a telephone. You know what type of phone popped out? And I flip phone. So I next asked him, why did you pull out a flip phone? And he looked at me and he says, you know, they can't have that. You're not gonna go after that. So I guess my question is, what do we have in place in case the hack can get us with the wrong message? And obviously, we know AI is really exploratory. And obviously, people get AI and get out the wrong message.
So that's an excellent point too. And we've seen, past in Hawaii where messages were sent out incorrectly, and it can cause a real amount of panic.
And then one more thing I want to add with it, isn't really the only thing that we have for security when the towers go down is a walkie-talkie defense, which is pretty much done out of Millbrae, I think mostly. The best thing for communication that won't go down because you don't have to worry about towers is your walkie-talkie. And ham radio.
So I think, if cellular communication goes down, we would use the weather radios and broadcast over radio, regular radios and TV channels. That would be our secondary option.
But that would be part of a really important education to the public.
Yes.
Because without that, they're all saying, hey, where's my phone? The towers are down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atherton?
Is satellite communications part of the network that we're putting in place?
So we have some satellite communication capability, but one of the big problems with satellite communication is that you have to have clear skies. And you have to actually go outside. So I have a satellite phone that's sitting in here, would not receive signal. I have to be outside. So there's some issues with satellite.
How are we doing for time? Well, do we have time for the AI presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we continue on with the questions? Do we have to stop?
Yeah, a few more questions, maybe.
Okay,
Just two.
continue to go on here this way.
I do have a question. I'll say this, I appreciate very much your presentation. What I find lacking about the alert, is that when we first started with the SMC alert, what we end up doing in my town is that we ask our residents to opt out. Because by the time that they sign up, they have to customize it. Takes a lot of effort. For a lot of seniors, they don't have time, they don't have the expertise to do so. When you put them in, because we have the establishment talking about the trust, that we are able to say, we're using this for the SMC alert. They trust us, and then they can opt out if it's too frequent. We use our smartphones for everything. And so it's really hard to prioritize as to what is important. We monitor our own home security, then we have, on top of it, we have all this. So in our town, we've been asking people to sign up with the SMC alert heavily. And we kind of stay away from the Genesis, partly because, first of all, they spell Genesis in a different spelling. Nobody can find them, and this is the engineering. And then the other is that we push for the Zone Haven, that name sticks, but Genesis won't stay with them because of companies and whatnot. So I think that is the trouble. My shake is the same way, is that we're encouraging people to sign up for the multiple
Absolutely.
alert, cause people to just kind of tune out. I do want to say though, redundancy is important in emergency preparedness. So however the layer that is appropriate to the individual, I totally encourage that. But I do think that, it would be helpful for the DEM to sort of advocate as to what is the top priorities, and we can push out for that. And all the others ancillary comes after, and that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions over here?
So thank you for the presentation. My question is, will this at any one point be tested and you're visually impaired and you're hearing impaired community? So basically they know how to do their thing.
That's something that we've been exploring, the lacking. There are ways to have, for the hearing and visual impaired, we've been exploring those. It's one of the big priorities for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What other questions over here?
Something that always confused me, because it requires internet, and the first thing that will go down in an emergency, or very likely, is the internet. So I just, Genesis seems a little bit better at countdown, and actually you sort of sign up ahead of time so that you can see. But it's, I think at some point I would love more explanation as to how we work with all of these different apps and in an earthquake, for example, and or even the storms when they go down. And then the second thing I'd say is the SMC alert, and just looking at what I got in your number, that basically it says the roadway is blocked on critical strengths between. We need more specific information. They're often I don't even know which city it's in, or just there's too many alerts. It needs to be done more precisely.
Yes, and that's one of the challenges that we face is that we allow our law and fire departments to put these out in an attempt to speed those things up. We switched to a new platform, which sort of left a training gap. As those things happen, we work with the sender and the sending, whoever sent it, and try and train them on that and to get them to provide information. They're in the field, they're thinking about what's going on, they're trying to notify you. It can be very easy to let those things slip. So we try to work with them at training thing, because it really is just a training issue and having them be a little bit more practiced. To your first question, trying to notify any one single person is a really, really difficult task. That's why we want to build redundancies and have these different methods, because you never know which one's going to work. And having that ability to push it out across multiple platforms may allow us to get something through that you may not expect.
And if you get one of those SMC alerts and it doesn't say anything, I've responded and said, what city? And you get another SMC alert with the city right away. So someone is monitoring.
Yes, we do monitor those. And if you respond to the email or text, whoever the duty officer is reviewing those. So we use that as a training tool.
Thank you.
Quick one, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Quick one. If I can make a recommendation to the chair. And what I've learned thus far, different cities and the different topographies involved in different cities. Can we get a quick presentation on the pros and cons of analog versus digital? Because, we tend to want to move away from analog, but in some cities with topographical, geographical situations, analog may be the best way to go and should be maintained, the pros and cons, and I think that would go good for presentation and even the POTS system, both moving away from POTS. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the, what? Do we need public comment by law under a presentation?
I think we should just take it on anything on the regular.
There's nobody there. Okay, public comment.
Public comment is now open for item number 6. If your hand is raised and seeking to call for this item, joining by phone, please press star 9 to raise your hand. There is no public comment.
Yeah. On to item number 7. Evacuation modeling software demonstration. Yes.
To introduce to you, new Mr. Lazarus, he's the CEO of Lazarus, and he will be demoing the evacuation software that uses AI. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you very much. First off, thank you very much for having us here today with you. Really appreciate that. It's good to see actually some of our friends from Woodside, Portola Valley, who have used this in the past. And it's a great opportunity, we think, to be able to take this and implement it as part of the vision that PM has when the treaty is set forth, that will benefit, we think, everybody in Centertown. A little bit about Lazarus. So our company provides predictive and now generative as well AI, primarily to the public sector. So governments at the state, county, city, and special district level. We do this across the United States, and many of our early customers years ago were here in the Bay Area. The company's originally out of Berkeley. So we have a long history of trying to bring this technology and these kind of innovations to the public sector, and specifically in life safety, right? Where we have the unique pleasure of solving one of the kind of more complicated challenges in life safety, which is evacuations. And that's what we're going to look at here today. So looking at the application that we have just deployed here for San Mateo County, the contract I think signed today, and probably, you know, especially with the lighting, easier to see it on these screens if you look up there. What this allows you to do is quickly get answers quantified to the two most critical questions in an evacuation scenario from an emergency management perspective. And that's how long is it going to take to get the people out? And what does traffic look like everywhere over the course of that evacuation? So you'll see these are actually, in this case, the now protect evac zones getting pulled in, and you're able to model with and without those. And what we can do is in real time or in advance, we can define an area that we want to evacuate. So, you know, DM can have this up in the EOC when the incident is happening, or they can run tabletops and drills in advance. They can decide what area they're going to evacuate. We're going to pull in data about that region, how many vehicles there are, large vehicles, small ones, you know, whatever demographic information we have on that as well. And we'll decide where we want those people to go. So again, you know, law enforcement, they may simply say, here's our area, click, click, run the evacuation scenario. DM may get more advanced with it. They can sequence their evacuation, phase it out, you know, block roads, cut off arteries, flooding scenarios, all sorts of different what if scenarios that may happen. And they can say, for example, you know, this is what it looks like right now. This is what it looks like, you know, during peak season on the 4th of July. What's our evacuation likely to look like? And we can quickly run a model. So this is going to take about 10 or 15 seconds to crunch all the numbers for every vehicle and every resident in that area and how long it's going to take them to get out. And what we'll see is how long that takes and what traffic is projected to look like as that event evolves. And so that took about 5 seconds instead of 10, and not bad. So
Leo, sorry to interrupt.
no problem.
Are you saying that when you're asking AI to do the calculation, you already put in whether it was a wildfire or it's flooding or it's something, some sort of related, because it does depend on the directions where you're going to evacuate people to, right?
Right. So it's designed to be multi-hazard in the sense, and we'll look at it in a minute, how you build out those different types of scenarios. But again, the goal here is in a matter of seconds, you're able to put those numbers to this problem, whether that's a wildfire or a flood. And, you know, for reference, if you were to do a traditional traffic study, something like this might take, you know, 8 or 9 months and cost several $100,000 for a one-time assessment of, you know, of this scale, basically. So what we're seeing here, if I may, we have times and then we also have traffic, right? So at the beginning of the event, what does it look like? And then how does this progress over time? So we see the choke points evolve and pinch points evolve in the roads, and we can see, all right, you know, if we freeze it here, why do we have congestion right here? What can we do to mitigate that, you know, drive that number down, or reallocate our law enforcement resources to more effectively deploy in those areas? You had a question?
Yeah, my question in your analysis, depending on the disaster and the size of it, does it tell you how many people that you would need in emergency services? And does it have the analytical ability to realize that we might be underutilized? So let's say you had a catastrophe in 1 or 2 cities, and this analysis comes up and it says, you know, we're going to need 50 ambulances. We're going to need police and fire. Does it have an ability to know how many people are unavailable for an emergency service at a particular time?
So that data depends on the organization that we contract with. If they give us access to those kind of resources, unique to this platform is the idea that you're actually able to bring in many different types of data sets. We'll take a look at what some of those data sets are in just a second. If that information is available, then yes, it can be included. Although I'd say that's typically only available most of the time in our deployments at the county level or higher. So it depends on the organization, really. Just to touch on that subject of access to data. So this system's pulling in road data, address data, as well as, you know, several other kinds of data sets basically that allow the AI to run these models. And so that lets us test all sorts of what if scenarios again very quickly. So we can zoom in on a particular road segment, you know, maybe for a winter storm event and say,
What if we counterflow the freeway? We can flip that on, or we can turn that off, right? Counterflow being all the traffic's going both the same way. Right? And so very quickly, we can test these strategies that before would have taken months, maybe years to really test, and then start embedding that in training, multi-jurisdictional planning. So places, for example, like Orange County here, which brings in really quite an enormous volume of data, 3 million people, they use it mostly for that purpose, right? So in exercises, doing multi-jurisdictional drills for tsunamis, but then in real time, actually allocating, where does the sheriff's office go, basically, based on these kinds of models, in real time. So just another note kind of on the data is that this also allows you to then project the impacts of new developments, right? So if you modify the infrastructure that you have, we can see here, if we pull this up, building new roads, right? Very quickly saying, okay, we're going to create a secondary egress route out of the community. What might this do for our evacuations? And sometimes those costs, often multiple millions of dollars, 15, 20, $30 million for a single egress route sometimes. And, a lot of our current customers use these models basically to spend that most effectively and really get quantifiable return on investment for infrastructure investments. Other questions that anyone has so far? I like this to be interactive as they come up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good results, impressive, but, how is it verified? How do you test it? How do you, real events happen, you go back and analyze that? How do we know this is, and how accurate can we assume? Sorry.
Certainly, yeah. So let me start by saying we take that very question extremely seriously. We primarily provide life safety risk models, right? So all of our models are double blind verification tested. That means we have external parties that will conduct essentially their own analysis. Then they'll use our software and conduct an analysis with it without us being involved, and they'll compare the results in a neutral setting. That's been done multiple times, actually as part of facilitating plans like CWPPs, wildfire protection plans, hazard mitigation plans for other counties, in which this is very often used for that exact purpose. We've also, generally whenever we deploy for a region, part of the implementation process is back testing against actual scenarios that have happened. And what the nice thing is about AI is you can calibrate it to those expectations. So the more scenarios that you run with this, the better it gets for all of our customers and the better it gets for you. I also point out that when we originally deployed for Woodside and Portola Valley, Marshall Bullard led a pretty extensive, and actually part of the EPC, led a pretty extensive deep dive into essentially the modeling dynamics underlying this as well. Yeah, it's a super important question. We take it very seriously. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So could I just ask for a clarification? Genesis, Zone Haven, when it first sold to us, at least the presentation was such that, sort of with the battalion chief and the chief there, with their experience, they would anticipate how long the fire is going to go and which direction and whatnot, and where the evacuate. The software is going to offer a shorter time frame and a wider anticipation to help us operate so that we can evacuate people smoothly. What is the difference with your program in terms of when you talk about AI? What does that mean?
Yeah, so to clarify your question, are you asking about the difference between Genesis and Ladris or the integration of AI into what Ladris does?
So a little bit about the difference as to what to understand of applying the softwares to anticipate in a quicker time. Is that how you interpret it as the sort of elements of the AI? I mean, I'm just trying to understand it. It's been populated a lot, and I just want to understand what does that mean in your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really good question. We'll take it in two parts. So first, we are a partner of Genesis. Ladris actually selected Genesis to be an authorized reseller for our product. So, they're one of the many sales channels that you're able to purchase this through. Essentially, what they provide is critical communications. So Zone Haven is an example of that, in getting the message out to the public. What this provides is modeling, data modeling. And AI just happens to be right now one of the best tools for doing data modeling. It's predictive analytics, data analytics, those have all kind of, had their time. And AI is currently a new way of doing that. Not necessarily always the best way, but in this case, it's used to answer that really, really critical question of, how are people going to behave in these situations? And given the information we do have, how can we extrapolate that to the information we don't have? And AI is really, really good at filling those gaps. So in this context, we're, thrilled that we can provide it for, fundamentally, we think a good purpose in life safety. Sometimes you hear in the news it's applied for all sorts of things, but here it's a very focused application where it's trying to basically predict, all right, given these conditions, what are we likely to see? And really, how can we compare these models? No model's perfect, but some are useful. And especially when you compare them, you can start to get insights that then allow you to make better decisions. Hopefully that answers your question, perhaps a little bit roundabout, but I hope that helps.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
I think you're going to talk about the data sets you're using, like you're showing real-time traffic data. Where are you getting that? And what other data sets are you integrating into your models? Are you going to talk about that?
I'd be happy to. First off, on the real-time traffic, so fundamentally, basically all information we have about what's happening in real time comes from, actually, like the anecdote was describing here, I think was cell phones, right? It all comes from cell phones. So we, of course, don't have anything other than fully anonymized data, and that's provided to us by aggregators, right? So companies like Google or Waze, or really the cell carriers will collect that data, they will sell that to aggregators, and then we buy that data from them, from the aggregators, and feed it into these models to understand, at 3 p.m. 5 years ago, there was a disaster. What did traffic look like at that time? And what can we learn from that as we train our model to be better at predicting what may happen at 3 p.m. This time, on the 4th of July, for example. When it comes to the other data sets that we use, it's a combination of public and private data. So there is a lot of publicly available information on road networks, on addresses, right? And that's everything from the census all the way to the crowdsourced information. We collect all of that, we combine it, and then we provide that back to our users and emergency managers in a very transparent way. Essentially, every attribute of that data that you see here is something that can be changed. The number of cars, the number of heavy vehicles at those addresses, other open source information that we pull down and that we combine then with our private databases that we pay for as well. And we open all that back up so you're easily able to modify it, right? It's not static information that can't be changed. Rather, our users have full control over it and they can use it to create those what if scenarios. Does that kind of help answer that question?
Yeah, I was curious if you're using Waze or Apple, or you said you're getting it off the phone data. And then is our county able then to feed emergency information into that? Because it's only as good as the data you have, it's real time. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's the nice thing about this platform is it does have underlying it a pretty comprehensive data warehouse layer. So, what we hope to do with DEM, and I'm sure you can speak further to this, I'm sure, is implement a lot of that, not just the data, but the process piece around it, right? How can we make sure we're using the data as efficiently as possible? And that's part of the broader strategy, right, is these data-driven decisions. So the short answer is yes, they can bring that data to the table. And that's essentially why, why we have this and the value we hope to deliver with it here. So
I think part of this is that in the past, what an evacuation model would look like is there would be a static study that would be done and that would live on the shelf, right? And so we have a contractor with O'Brien doing that study. That is a static study, and that needs to be done. We need to do risk analysis. We need to go out and understand the communities really well. But it's one and done. What this allows us to do is run the model and to really understand, and also understand what can we do to mitigate some of the, like, for example, people that leave 5 minutes after you've said evacuation, you've called evacuation versus 10 minutes, because you may need more resources to support those people than the folks that leave at 5 minutes because they've already left. What does the road congestion look like? So this is a lot more than what most people have right now on their shelves. This is a pilot program. We have a contract for a year. The plan is to really see what the capabilities are and how we can use it. And ideally, my vision is that if we like it, maybe we put this in the hands of the public, right? We give them this, say, hey, play around. Here are the controls. Play around in your area what this looks like. Maybe that works. Maybe that doesn't work. But But we need to think through what this looks like and how we can empower ourselves with knowledge, and making data-driven decisions.
You know, you said one critical thing earlier on, and it's resources that need to be implemented, and that we as a county or we as a city need to be able to give you that data. Because we do not know, or you do not know, in your analysis, you may be able to say we need so much fire equipment, police and fire, but our city may be low at that time. So in the really broad analysis, it's probably dependent, and I think you're saying it's dependent on us, for our cities to be able to give you that data so that you could input that in the analysis. So even though his analysis is really brilliant, those resources may not be available in your city at that particular time. So somehow, I guess we collectively need to give them some data that you could put that in analysis. Is that right? I mean, because you really don't have that information.
Well, I think absolutely what you need depends on what you have when you start, right? But bigger picture, you know, we also try to focus on, you can't always change the infrastructure very quickly, right? Not always. You can't always, you know, requisition more resources, but you can implement tactics that do make a very large difference. So for example, you know, if we were to look at this scenario that we have up here, to Shruti's point, we can very quickly run it again. And we don't have to wait 9 months or 8 months. We can run it again and say, all right, this time we're going to phase out this evacuation a little bit differently. So we're going to have one zone go first. We're going to have the other one delayed by about 15 minutes. And then, you know, the last one will go half an hour later. And we can actually see very quickly what difference that makes just with the resources that we have, assuming all things are held constant. And then assuming we see enough of that improvement, we can start strategically making investments in those kind of other improvements that are perhaps more costly or more expensive. But it's the ability to quickly figure out the effectiveness of the changes that you make that makes programs like this unique. And that, to your point earlier from Hillsborough, is the advantage of AI, right? It allows us, you know, to shorten the decision-making process by an order of magnitude or more, by being able to run these calculations much faster, you know, than was ever really possible before. I mean, I'd say 5 years ago, this kind of thing wasn't possible, and now it is. So very exciting to be working on that. Yes, sorry.
I wanted to ask about the relationship with Zone Haven. Are you, because they have infrastructure for putting information in, so are you guys running the data analysis and are you partners with them? So you're working with their existing software and you're doing the AI analysis for them?
So we are partners with Genesis. They are an authorized reseller for Ladris. So they have the rights to essentially resell Ladris's products to, you know, a certain portion of their customer base. And we work directly with all of our customers, including the ones that they sell through as a channel.
And in terms of what Zone Haven, the Zone Haven actually come into Ladris, not the other way around. So that is, Zone Haven has its zones, or Genesis has its zones, and it comes into Ladris, and we will do modeling using those zones.
So are you moving away from the Zone Haven?
They're two different things, and they have two very different applications.
Yeah, it'd be really helpful for us as residents if this stuff was all, there was one, and that it all worked together, and that it was consistent all the way down, and that we didn't change
I
it.
would love
after we
that too.
implemented it.
I would love that too, so.
I think one thing we have to be careful of though, is we're really talking apples and oranges here. What they're talking about is modeling.
Yeah.
This is not real time stuff. This is modeling. Zone Haven's real time, that you know, whoever the IC is can push stuff out to people during the emergency. This is stuff you do ahead of time to get a sense for. We've run a bunch of different scenarios, so when we have an emergency, we have some ideas of how to best do this. But it's not a real.
It's not a real-time modeling system that you would have?
Well, I'm so sorry, through Chair. Just to, you know, ask the question, I thought that you do too, both. You do the modeling so that so the cities or the county would have a chance to prepare for the evacuation plans, right? And they're not gonna sit idle, like you said, as to the one time. But that there's also the element of, because of the AI that you talk about, and that's why I was asking for clarification, is that the real time, if something shows up on your model that it turned into red, that you have a quicker way to decide as to why it costs, what the cost is and how we can mitigate.
Yeah, so to essentially answer all three questions at once, and this is a more recent development. But yes, exactly. So first off, just to echo Craig's point, models are most useful for the things. That's always the case. It's always good to have these things run before the disaster happens. The fundamental difference between us and Zonehaven is that Genesis now is that they provide communications, we provide model. That's essentially the difference. Again, much like Craig mentioned. The piece, we do pull in the traffic data down to the minute. That is new since I think we originally deployed with you all. So that does give you the conceivable capacity to run these models in the moment during an emergency. And because we are, working on further product integrations with Protect EVAC, you'd be able to do things like if there's a zone split in Protect EVAC, you can see that zone split in Labdrus and run models with it, right, to see if that's effective or not. So you would be able to use it in real time, and you are able to. It's just that, as always, models are most useful in advance. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's the question I wanted to get at.
Well, it's essentially the most accurate data that anyone has. So, it's the same data that feeds into, when the Google map shows the roads red, it's basically that data. It's the cell phone data anonymized coming from those phones. So there's probably usually about a 5-minute lag at least for most anonymized data, because that's just the time that it takes to get around the sun. But it's as accurate as essentially anyone's got.
And does your model update itself with real-time data, or is it just literally lay the data on top of what's there?
It does update with the real-time data.
Okay, so the model is constantly evolving as it started to see traffic jam. That group will back up through all the people trying to leave.
Yep, and that's, again, this is exactly, this is essentially what, I think one of our friends on the EPC that we both probably know, it's for, years ago, and now it's here. Any other questions? And actually, just given the fact that there are so many, I might allow the chair to select who they'd like to go next, if that's all right. If you want to call on folks, that'd make it easier.
I want to adjourn.
Okay.
Let me ask you, I'm sorry, will you be here after the meeting if individuals want to come up to you? Maybe that's an opportunity, one-on-one when there are specific questions. Is that all right, Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Of course.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, is there any other business? Being done, meeting adjourned. Adam, can I see you and Shirley? Yeah.